All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at some stuff from across the pond.
Ooh, across the pond.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking a look at UK small business taxes.
Sounds fun.
You guys send in a whole bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
articles and blog posts about it, and let me tell you,
Yeah,
it is fascinating stuff.
it is.
So whether you're, a small business owner yourself,
Right.
or you just like learning about how other countries do their taxes, get ready.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be pulling out some real knowledge nuggets today.
You are going to unearth those golden nuggets.
That's right.
I did like that blog post from MANCO accountants.
Oh, yeah.
That one's clearly aimed at small businesses in the UK.
Yeah, that's the one that we're really going to be focusing on today.
Okay.
So consider this your crash course
All right.
in UK small business taxes.
Love it.
Throw on your best British accent, and let's figure out how these businesses can keep more of their hard-earned pounds. Okay, so the blog post jumps right into it with the key takeaways right up front.
Perfect.
Planning ahead, using allowances, staying compliant, and seeking expert advice.
I feel like those are universal.
Right. I feel like that's pretty much good advice no matter where you are in the world.
Absolutely. And that planning ahead part really can't be overstated.
Yeah.
I think tax planning is kind of like mapping your route before you go on a road trip.
Okay.
You don't want to just get in the car and start driving and hope that you end up where you want to go. You want to know where the tolls are going to be.
Right.
You want to know if there's construction or any road closures, so you're not,
right.
having to make all these last-minute detours.
Right. So it's like you're planning ahead so you're not stuck.
Exactly. It saves you time, it saves you money, it saves you a lot of headaches in the long run.
Okay, so the blog post even starts off with this question, right at the top.
Oh, really?
Why does tax planning matter for small businesses?
Oh, okay.
And obviously we want to, pay as little in taxes as possible.
Sure.
But I feel like there's got to be more to it than that, right?
Yeah, there's always more to it.
Yeah.
It's not just about hiding your money from the tax man. It's about managing your finances responsibly so that you can grow your business.
Right. And so this blog post really emphasizes that smart tax planning can help businesses keep more of their earnings while also staying compliant with HMRC.
Okay.
Which I'm assuming is
That's the UK's tax authority.
Okay, so basically their version of the IRS.
Exactly, yeah. They're the ones who enforce the tax laws over there.
Okay, so it sounds like HMRC is who you don't want to mess with.
No, you do not want to get on their bad side.
All right, good to know.
Yeah.
So let's talk about deductible expenses.
Okay.
Now, the blog post lists some of the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Office costs, travel, professional fees, marketing, equipment, software. That's a pretty wide range of things that you can deduct, right?
It is, yeah. And I think a lot of those are pretty standard across different countries.
Yeah.
Those are the things that most businesses are going to have.
Right. But I'm wondering if there are any unusual or unexpected deductions
Oh, interesting.
that maybe we wouldn't think of here in the U.S.
Well, one that comes to mind is VAT.
What is that?
So VAT stands for value added tax.
Right.
It's kind of like sales tax, but way more complicated. And the interesting thing is that even if your business isn't required to register for VA, you can still reclaim it under certain circumstances.
So you can reclaim it even if you don't have to register for it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm already a little bit confused.
It is confusing. It's a very nuanced system.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you have a small business and you're spending 10,000 pounds on expenses.
Okay.
And those expenses are VA chargeable. You could potentially reclaim 3,000 pounds of that VAT.
Wait, 3,000 pounds?
Yeah, it can be a significant amount of money.
Wow. Okay, so this VA thing sounds like it's kind of a big deal.
It is, yeah. It's definitely something that small businesses need to be aware of.
Okay, so back to that VAT registration threshold you were talking about.
Right.
So the blog post mentioned a turnover of 90,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Is that a hard and fast rule, or is there any wiggle room there?
So that 90,000 pounds, that's the mandatory registration threshold.
Okay.
So if your turnover is above that, you have to register for VAT.
Okay.
But here's the interesting part. You can voluntarily register for VAT even if your turnover is lower.
Okay, so why would you want to do that?
There are a few reasons.
Okay.
So let's say you mainly work with businesses that are already VAT registered. If you register yourself, it can make you look more professional.
Okay.
And it can make it easier to do business with them.
Right.
Or maybe you're expecting your business to grow quickly.
Okay.
And you're going to hit that threshold soon.
Yeah.
In that case, it might make sense to register early.
So it's you're planning ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, you're thinking strategically about your business's future.
Got it.
But it's important to weigh the pros and cons.
Okay.
VAT registration comes with some administrative burdens.
Oh, okay.
So you need to make sure it's the right decision for your business.
Okay, so you really got to weigh like the potential benefits of registering
Right.
versus the hassle of like managing all the paperwork.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so the blog post also mentioned something called PYE,
Uh-huh.
which stands for like pay as you earn.
Yeah.
And that sounds kind of complicated.
Well, it's basically the UK's system for deducting income tax
Okay.
and national insurance contributions from employee salaries.
Okay.
So it's kind of like their version of withholding taxes,
Right, yeah.
making sure the government gets their cut right from the source.
Right. Okay, so it sounds like that's pretty important to get right.
It is, yeah. If you mess up your payee calculations,
Mm-hmm.
you could face some hefty penalties from HMRC.
Oof. Yeah, we don't want that.
No, we do not.
So why is pay tricky for small businesses?
Well, one thing is that tax codes
Yeah.
and national insurance rates can change.
Oh.
So you have to stay on top of those changes
Right.
to make sure you're calculating everything correctly.
Yeah, I imagine that could be a real pain.
It can be, yeah, especially for small business owners who are already juggling a million other things.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely one area where having a good accountant can really pay off.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about income tax. Now let's talk about corporation tax.
Right.
The blog post mentions some ways to reduce your corporation tax liability,
Okay.
like claiming R&D tax relief, utilizing capital allowances, paying yourself tax efficiently, making pension contributions.
Those are all good strategies.
Yeah, those sound pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Now, the ones that I'm most curious about are R&D tax relief and capital allowances.
Okay.
Those sound like they could be really valuable for like a growing business.
They can be, yeah. So R&D tax relief, that's basically a reward for businesses that are investing in innovation.
Okay.
So if you're developing new products or processes
Right.
or even just improving existing ones,
Mm-hmm.
you could be eligible for this tax relief.
Okay, so that's like the UK government saying, hey, we want you to innovate.
Exactly.
We're going to give you a little tax break to encourage you to do that.
Yeah, it's a great incentive.
Okay, cool. So what about capital allowances?
So capital allowances,
Yeah.
they let you deduct a portion of the cost of investments in assets
Okay.
that are used in your business.
Right.
So things like machinery, vehicles, computer software.
Right. Yeah.
It's a way to encourage businesses to invest in their growth.
Right. And also reduce their tax burden at the same time.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, so those sound like some really helpful strategies.
Yeah, they're definitely worth looking into.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to HMRC deadlines.
Okay.
Now, the blog post points out that there are different deadlines for like everything.
Oh, really?
Self-assessment, corporation tax, VAT, KY.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
So, like, how big of a deal is it if you miss these deadlines?
Oh, you do not want to miss those deadlines.
Okay.
Like, seriously, HMRC does not mess around.
Yeah. Okay.
You can get hit with penalties, and interest charges can add up really quickly.
Oof. Okay.
So, yeah, it's important to stay organized.
Yeah.
Mark those deadlines on your calendar.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
There are plenty of resources available to small businesses.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Yeah.
All right, so the last point that the blog post makes is about outsourcing accounting.
Okay.
And, I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff today.
We have.
And I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed already.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
So, like, I can see why someone would want to just hand all this over to an expert.
Right. And honestly, for a lot of small businesses,
Yeah.
it just makes sense.
Oh.
Tax systems are complicated. And it can be really time-consuming to try to keep up with all the rules and regulations.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you make a mistake, it can cost you a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So having a professional on your side
Yeah.
who can help you navigate all of that,
Yeah.
it can be a really valuable investment.
Right. Okay, so I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
So, like, we've just scratched the surface of UK small business taxes.
We have. There's so much more to learn.
But hopefully this has given you a good overview of, like, the key things to keep in mind.
I think so.
And we'll be diving into more specific topics in the next 2 parts of this deep dive.
All right. I'm excited to keep learning.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back after a quick break.
Sounds good.
All right, so we were talking about reclaiming VAT,
Uh-huh.
even if you're not registered for it.
Right.
And I feel like there's got to be a catch, right?
Well, yeah, there are some conditions that you have to meet.
Okay.
Like the expenses have to be directly related to your business, and you have to keep really good records.
Oh.
But yeah, if you do everything right, it can be a big help.
Okay, especially for businesses that don't have a lot of wiggle room in their budget.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so the blog post also has like a little FAQ section
Okay.
that goes into some like more specific questions.
Okay.
And one that I thought was interesting was about the difference between being self-employed and running a limited company.
Right.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So in the UK, you can either operate as a sole trader,
Okay.
which is basically just being self-employed,
Okay.
or you can set up a limited company.
Okay.
And the main difference is how you're taxed.
Okay.
So sole traders pay income tax on their profits through self-assessment,
Okay.
whereas limited companies pay corporation tax.
Okay.
And the directors of the company take salaries or dividends,
Okay.
which are taxed differently.
Okay. So it sounds like the way your business is structured
Yeah,
can have a big impact on your taxes.
it really can.
So like, how do you decide which way to go?
Well, it depends on your individual circumstances.
Okay.
You know, your risk tolerance, your long-term goals.
Aye.
Like a limited company offers limited liability,
Right.
which means your personal assets are protected.
Okay.
But it also comes with more administrative burdens,
Right.
whereas being self-employed is simpler to set up.
Okay.
But you're personally liable for any business debts.
Gotcha. So it's like a trade-off.
Yeah, you have to weigh the pros and cons and see what makes the most sense for your situation.
Okay. Another FAQ that I thought was interesting was about legally reducing your tax bill.
Ooh, who wouldn't want to know about that?
Right. Like that's the holy grail right there.
Yeah.
So what's the secret?
Well, there's no magic bullet,
Okay.
but the blog post emphasizes claiming all allowable expenses,
Okay.
utilizing tax relief schemes,
Hmm.
and structuring your income efficiently.
Okay.
It's really about understanding the rules and using them to your advantage.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned something called the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme.
Yes, the cease.
CEASE, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds like a pretty cool way to attract investment
It is.
and reduce your tax liability.
At the same time, yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So cease is a government scheme
Okay.
that's designed to encourage investment in early-stage companies.
Okay.
So it offers tax breaks to investors
Right.
who back promising startups.
So it's like a win-win for both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great way for startups to get funding
Right.
and for investors to reduce their tax bills.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good scheme.
I'm sensing a theme here.
What's that?
The UK government seems to be really supportive of small businesses.
They are, yeah. There are a lot of schemes and incentives available, not just for startups,
Okay.
but for established businesses as well.
So like what else is out there?
Well, there's the Enterprise Investment Scheme, or EIS,
Okay.
which is similar to CEASE,
Mm-hmm.
but it's for more mature companies.
Okay.
It's all about fostering growth and innovation.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of ways to save money on taxes.
We have.
But let's talk about the flip side.
Okay.
What happens if you miss a tax deadline?
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, the blog post mentions penalties and interest charges.
Yeah.
But, like, how bad is it really?
It can be really bad.
Okay.
Like, imagine you've been working so hard on your business, you're
Yeah.
finally starting to see some success, and then you miss a deadline,
Yeah.
and suddenly you're facing all these fines and penalties,
Oh, no.
and you have to deal with all this extra paperwork.
It's like a nightmare.
It is. It's a huge headache.
Okay, so it sounds like staying on top of those deadlines is crucial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, set reminders, get organized,
Mm.
and if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it.
Right.
There are people who can help you with this stuff.
Okay, good to know. So we've talked a lot about, like, the technical side of UK taxes,
Yeah.
but have you come across any, like, real-life stories
Oh, yeah.
that illustrates how these concepts actually play out in the real world?
I have. So there was this one story about a small business owner
Okay.
who was really struggling.
Uh,
They were about to give up on their dream,
mm-hmm.
and then they found out they were eligible for R&D tax credits.
Wow.
Yeah. And that completely turned their business around.
That's amazing.
It just goes to show that even small tax breaks can make a huge difference.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
Okay, what other stories have you come across?
Well, there was another one about a family-run business
Okay.
that was facing a huge inheritance tax bill.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was not looking good,
Mm-hmm.
but they worked with a tax advisor, and they were able to restructure their assets and utilize various allowances,
Uh-huh.
and they ended up saving a ton of money.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
So it sounds like getting professional advice can really pay off.
It can, yeah, especially when you're dealing with complex tax issues.
Right.
You know, a good tax advisor can help you make the most of the rules. Yeah.
Protect your assets.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's so much more to learn about UK taxes.
But hopefully this has given you a good starting point.
Hopeful.
And a better understanding of like the basics.
Right.
So in the next part of this deep dive,
Yes.
we're going to be looking ahead to the future of UK taxes.
Ooh, the future.
Yeah, and exploring how businesses can adapt and thrive.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, we're back and ready to wrap up this deep dive into UK small business taxes.
It's been a journey.
It has been. We've talked about VAT, PYE.
Oh, yeah, all the acronyms.
All those acronyms, right? And all those growth incentives.
Yeah, the CIs, the EIs.
The CIs, the EIs. It's been a lot.
It has.
But it's been so interesting.
It has been, yeah. I feel like we've learned a lot.
Me too. And I feel like there's still so much more to learn.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you start thinking about, like, the future of UK taxes.
Oh, like what's coming down the pipeline.
Right. What trends should small businesses be aware of?
Exactly. Like what challenges are they going to be facing?
Right. Yeah, I'm really curious about how technology is changing things.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like, everything's going digital these days.
It is. You know, HMRC, the UK tax authority, they're moving towards a more digital system.
Okay.
They're calling it Making Tax Digital.
Making tax digital.
Or MTD for short.
MTD, got it.
Basically, businesses are going to have to keep digital records and submit tax information more often using compatible software.
Okay, so that sounds like a pretty big change.
It is. Yeah, it's a big shift.
So what does that mean for small business owners who aren't that tech savvy?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of user-friendly accounting software out there that's MTD compliant.
Okay.
And actually, a lot of it can really make things easier.
Okay.
You know, it can automate a lot of the tedious tasks.
Right, right.
So it's really about using technology to your advantage.
Yeah, and not being afraid of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so another big thing that's been happening in the UK is Brexit.
Oh, yeah, Brexit, that's a whole other can of worms.
Right, so how has that impacted taxes?
Well, it's hard to say for sure because it depends on the final trade agreements between the UK and the EU.
Right, right.
But one thing's for certain, UK businesses are going to have to adapt to a new set of rules.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So staying informed is key.
Definitely. Okay, so we've talked a lot about hiring an accountant.
Yeah.
But what about those small business owners who are doing their own taxes?
Right. The DIRs.
Yeah, the DIRs. What advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, take advantage of all the free resources out there.
Like what kind of resources?
Well, HMRC's website is a great place to start.
Okay.
They have tons of information.
Right.
Guides, FAQs, even interactive tools. And there are also webinars and workshops and online communities where you can connect with other business owners.
Right, so you can kind of learn from each other.
Yes, exactly, yeah. It's like having a support system.
Okay, so what if you run into a problem that you can't solve on your own?
Well, there are organizations that offer free tax advice.
Okay.
And if it's a really complex issue, you might want to consider talking to a tax professional.
Okay, so don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly. Sometimes it's worth it to get expert advice.
Definitely. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the biggest one is that tax planning is an ongoing process.
Okay.
It's not something you do once a year.
Right.
You got to stay informed, stay organized, and be proactive.
Definitely. Yeah. And remember, there are resources available to help you.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do this alone.
And don't forget the human element.
What do you mean by that?
Well, taxes can seem really impersonal.
Yeah.
But there are real people behind those numbers.
Right. Real businesses, real dreams.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Well, it's been great talking to you about all this.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into UK small business taxes.
Cheers.
We hope you learned something new.
We hope it wasn't too overwhelming.
Yeah. And remember, even though taxes can be complicated, with a little bit of planning and effort, you can make the system work for you.
Absolutely.
So that's it for today.
That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening.